Hello, kia ora, welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on whether you are joining us live or watching the recording. This is workshop 3 in our STEM and social innovation learning and design series, and we're really grateful that you have chosen to join us again and learn with us this afternoon. We know how precious your time is, and so we're always very, very privileged when you choose to spend that with us. This afternoon, as you would have seen in the intro, we've got some really great content ahead, which I'm really excited about, and I've got something I want to show you. But before we get into that, I would like to welcome on Corey Tutt from Deadly Science to do an acknowledgement to country. Corey, I'll hand over to you.
First of all, Yama, and that's hello in my language, which is Kamilaroi language. And my family come from the Kamilaroi Nation, which is in northern New South Wales in Australia. And I just want to acknowledge that I'm on the lands of the Dungati and Biripi people up here on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. And when we acknowledge country, I want to acknowledge the first scientists, the first engineers, the first technologists. You know, the first people to have the world's oldest bush medicine. If you go down a Coles or a Woolworths here in Australia, you'll see Baralum, which is tea tree oil. So it's like a bit of a bush tea, and it makes you feel better when you're a bit sick. But, you know, this has been ingrained in our culture for many thousands of years. So I want to acknowledge that I'm on the lands of the Biripi and Dungati people. And this time of year, we've just had the whales come past. So the wattles are out, the birds are chirping, and it's really, really beautiful. But the footsteps we take today are generally in the direction that we're going, and someone has walked here before us. And I want to acknowledge ancestors, past, present, and emerging, and any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people or First Nations people around the world joining us today, because it's really, really important that we get more voices in STEM, from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to Maori people to First Nations people all over Australia, all over the world, sorry. So thank you, and I'm really, really happy to be here.
Thanks so much, Corey. It's wonderful. I love tea tree, and I didn't know that sort of heritage of it. So it's really wonderful. I'm looking forward to lots more gems like that from you this afternoon. Before we get into that, we're going to cross the ditch to Steve.
Come on over. Yeah, kia ora, folks. Hey, look, I'd like to thank Corey very much for that welcome, and just talk or support what he says about our Indigenous cultures being, you know, a bunch of people who were our very first science to learn to get through. So on that note, kia ora whanau, ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa, kia papatuanuku tēnā koe, ki te whare tēnā koe, ki te tupuna tēnā koe, tēnā koutou katoa, tihei muriora. So welcoming you here today, paying respects to the earth we stand on, to the house you are in, and to your ancestors who have brought you here to this point. And yeah, just really supporting the messages there that, you know, our ancestors, our people who were here before us, came a very, very long way with not much. So this whole idea of social innovation and STEM is a really, really important one, I think, to think about from lots of different contexts. So it sounds like it's going to be an amazing afternoon yet again.
I know, we are very, very lucky to get to be able to help make this happen as a great learning opportunity for everyone. And we are really, really excited about hearing from this afternoon's presenters. I do have Corey, I know you're backstage right now, but I do have a copy of Corey's book here, which is, well, in theory, only belongs to my children. But it is, I'm sure we'll learn a little bit more about this afternoon, but we are really excited to have Corey join us today and share more about the first scientists. But we are also welcoming back, and they are in no means not as welcome, Crispy and Jim, to round out this particular series of workshops. And Chrissy, I'm assuming you're going to talk about the micro-credentialing. I mean, last week, I'm pretty sure Steve and I were saying that we wanted micro-credentials just for turning up each week, and yeah, I'm not sure if you wanted that yet. But if you could get to that, that would be great.
Yeah. Hey, Kimberly, that book you bought for your children, is that like when someone buys like a Lego set for their kids. He goes, "Oh, it's for the kids, and it's the Millennium Falcon. They needed it. It's really expensive, but they need." Okay, good. So I'm the only one. Awesome, sweet. Okay.
Yeah. No,
we'll send you one.
I'm 100% that mother. I also just did buy one of my favorite STEM toys for the children, which is magnetic tiles. I just bought an extension kit to that because I couldn't make big enough ball runs with it. Nothing to do with my children, like all for me. So, STEM learning is transcends ages.
You're modeling the learning there. You're modeling the learning, show them how cool it is, and they'll pick it up and run with it. So great.
Excellent. I think this is the part where they magically remove us, Steve. So
yeah.
I think we're just like the hook that comes down off the screen and we disappear. So we'll hand over to you all. Thank you for everything that we're about to learn.
Thanks, Kimberly. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to be here for the final STEM and social innovation workshop. I'm just going to talk for a moment about the overview of today, and then we're going to pass straight back over to Corey, who's going to take us and Fee to take us through the learning, the incredible learning and the incredible Indigenous knowledge that STEM is built upon. So in terms of the course, we've already done the first workshop, which was the what, the why, and the how of STEM and social innovation projects. 2 weeks ago, we looked at developing solutions, building prototypes, and taking some critique. And then today, we're looking at how we can help learners to share solutions. And we're going to give you some design tools. So we're going to give you some really, hopefully, very useful tools to help you to design your own STEM project. As Kimberly alluded to just now, for those of you who want a micro-credential, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the workshop, there will be a micro-credential available for you. There is a very short questionnaire, and it has a little bit of a quiz just to show a particular question. I'm not going to reveal the question, but a question just to help us to understand that you have hopefully learned something or found something useful. And then we will issue your micro-credentials next week. So we're going to give you about a week to fill in that to fill in the form, and then we'll issue the micro-credentials. So just in terms of our knowledge set, mindset, skill set, and tool set today, so remembering going back to that idea of split screen learning outcomes, for this particular workshop, we're looking at a deeper understanding of the importance of Indigenous knowledge in STEM. So that's I'm really excited about that. And we're also going to look at examples of demonstrating and critiquing solutions with Google Sites and Jamboard. I am also excited about that. In terms of mindset, we really want you to think about yourselves as learning designers today, and we want you to think about critique. So critique is a key part of what we're going to be doing. And the reference in there, which talks about critique as being kind, specific, and helpful, comes from an amazing educator called Ron Berger from expeditionary schools in the United States. And he always talks about how do you build a culture where students give each other feedback to make high quality learning and to make high quality products. And he always talks about being kind, specific, and helpful. So kind but realistic, specific, focusing in on the things you can improve, and helpful, moving from feedback to feed forward. So what kind of advice can we give each other to help us to improve our solutions? In terms of skills, we're going to do a bit of analysis, looking at some presentation skills and some communication skills. And there are lots of tools as ever, but the ones that we're really focusing on are sites, Jamboard, and Chromebooks. So I'm going to stop talking there because I'm really excited to leave Fee and Corey for the next 15 minutes or so to really share some of that wonderful information. And also, should I mention this now? I should mention this now, right, Fee? Or you're going to mention it?
I've got one. And I'm not ashamed to mention that I bought this for myself. My children aren't old enough for it yet. So this is purely my copy, and they can have their own when they're old enough because I'm
just so everyone knows, before we pass on to Corey, just so everyone knows, we are running a live competition at the end of this workshop. Only people who are here live are going to be able to have the opportunity. 10 copies of The First Scientist that we'll be giving away and we'll tell you a little bit more about that a little bit later on. So I think, Corey, you're maybe going to share your screen a little bit and share around Deadly Science. I'm going to leave you to it, and I'll see you in 15.
Deadly, which, don't worry, you're not going to die. That's a form of slang to describe something as cool or awesome. Get in fast with those First Scientist copies, because I've run out of my authors copies and I've got a lot of family, so I'm going to be entering it. So make sure you enter it. You don't want me to win one. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Deadly Science and this organization that I founded. And whilst in the meantime, I'm going to slip in some cool Indigenous science facts from around the world. But welcome to Deadly Science. We have jumped in the DeLorean and we are here. And I'm going to hide my screen. But like I said, deadly in our world, in the mob world, in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander world, to describe something as cool or awesome. So kind of think of it as cool or awesome science. There's no COVID conspiracy. It's not, you're not going to die. It's just to describe something as cool. But why did I start Deadly Science? Well, Deadly Science is a charity that provides STEM mentoring and resources to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. Why is that? Well, actually, our people are the first scientists. We're the oldest living culture in the world, 65,000 plus years. And in New Zealand, we have First Nations people in New Zealand and all over the Pacific, and they've used astronomy, they've used they've used chemistry, they've used things like bush soap, resins, glue, you name it, and they've done science. If I told you that the world's oldest structures are right here down under in Australia, and to put it in comparison, the pyramids in Egypt are 4,000 years old, but actually the world's oldest fish traps here are 39,000 years old, roughly. So, we have objects that are man-made in Australia that are older than most structures on Earth, which is pretty deadly. So just to give you a bit of context, these are all the mobs in Australia, over 500 different clans of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And if you can see my fancy little mouse here, I'm from the Kamilaroi tribe, which is right here. And I'm also from this tribe up here as well. So I've got connections to all three tribes along here, but that's where my family come from. And that's why I'm a Kamilaroi man. A little bit about me. Like I said, I'm a Kamilaroi man. This is boring. I am 29 years old. I've been at the University of Sydney for 5 years. I've worked extensively in the animal industry. I'm the CEO of Deadly Science, and I'm the author of a number of children's books and this deadly book called The First Scientist. But how I got into science was really interesting. I grew up chasing lizards and snakes around my backyard, and I went through a lot of trauma. And I was told by my careers advisor, when I sat across from him, he said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, I wanted to be Harry Butler. If you're Googling Harry Butler, he's a herpetologist from the 70s. I was born in the 90s. So I wasn't born into privilege. I was born in a low socioeconomic family, and that's what I was reared on. Videotapes that were 20 years older than me and books, but I loved it. And I ended up becoming a zookeeper. I ended up shearing alpacas. I played rugby union. I spent a little bit of time in New Zealand as well. So I actually lived in Dunedin for a little bit. So if you hear me say Otago, my allegiances are with the Highlanders, and I apologise if that's upset anyone. The last 2 years, I've taught 50 kids how to read via Zoom, which is a platform similar to this, how I'm talking to you. And that's been that's my greatest achievement. I've also worked with more than 100 schools, about 120 now. And during that, I was named the Young Australian of the Year for New South Wales. I was, in 2020, I was the first person under 30 to win the Indigenous CSIRO STEM Champion Award. Recently, I was a Eureka Prize winner, but these all fail in comparison because to me, these aren't achievements. These are responsibility. They're a responsibility to the young, deadly scientists who look up to me to make sure that this stuff is possible for them. So when I provide First Nations kids with resources, it's to open up a door because there's two ingredients we all need, and especially if we're all into STEM, and that's passion and purpose. So after finding a school with 15 books in its whole school, I set off on my merry way and I started sending resources off to schools all over Australia. And those sort of grew. They grew to, shirts, telescopes, Zoom sessions, like I mentioned. And from that, we've grown and we've got 120 schools now, and we've already sent 20,000 resources off to remote communities, and it's growing every day. But we also do Zoom sessions. So you'll find that we're doing Zoom sessions, and we've got a portal on our website where we connect students with scientists from around Australia. But we also do a bit of a two-way learning. So we learn about the first science, and we also, whilst helping our mobs get the STEM skills today, because really we need more First Nations scientists in Australia, because we know our country better than anyone. And especially with climate change and things going on with the land, we need to dip into those knowledges and those instincts more than ever. We also provide primary school and high school students with science experiments, which is pretty deadly, and opportunities that previously probably wouldn't be available. So to spark that interest, to find that passion and that purpose. And it's just really important that young kids find that passion and purpose. We've provided over 20,000 books, like I said, and we've actually, one of the things that I'm really proud of is that this is Jill Cominion's school down the bottom here, and I put the first ever microscope in their school. Why is that important? Well, a microscope creates a vocabulary, creates an interest. It gives a kid an opportunity. If you can operate a microscope, that's a job. If you can operate a centrifuge, that's a job. If you can use your traditional knowledge and maintain that and combine the two, well, that's a pretty good job. And I really want these kids to find their passion and purpose. We've improved literacy and numeracy levels. So you can see all these lovely letters that we get. This is really deadly because we have to live in a world now where we have to live in both worlds, but we need our kids being strong and deadly in both. So one of the things that we do, we provide books and resources, but we also do a pen palship. So you'll see on our Facebook or our Instagram that we often work with other schools, and we swap over letters between the students and get the kids sort of writing as well, because it's an old sort of style thing, but it's really important that our deadly kids are able to communicate and write letters and do all that jazz. We give out deadly junior scientists, and this is young Trey, and Trey's one of the kids that I taught how to read, and he's from Geraldton community. He's a place called Penawanaka, and no, it's not like Willy Wonka. It's actually a place. It's a really remote place, but Trey is a really special kid because he doesn't want to be a deadly footballer. He wants to be a deadly geologist. We also have been helping kids that have fallen out of the education system, because just because you've mucked up and you've been locked up doesn't mean that STEM is not for you. And STEM should really be for everyone. And sometimes the system of school, sometimes an individual is not the right Lego piece, and that's totally okay. The best thing I can teach my kids is to be a deadly person first and a great scientist next. So I want you all to imagine and close your eyes. This is young Caitlin from the MJD Foundation, and she's one of my best friends in the whole wide world. She's from a place called Groote Eylet, and Groote Eylet's at the top of the Northern Territory. And, Caitlin's a really special friend of mine because she's the only child that I've made a promise to that I couldn't keep, and that was she wanted to look at the stars through a telescope, and unfortunately there wasn't a telescope available, so I decided that I would do the next best thing, and I would bring a projector and project the stars around her. And I want you all to imagine how Caitlin feels, because when you turn that projector on, you'll find a sense of normality. And I'm going to use this timeless quote that education equals freedom and STEM equals hope. And for me, the hope is, Caitlin finally, not quite getting a telescope, but finally the stars are being brought to her, and that she can look to the stars and she can hope. For me, it's really important that we engage our deadly scientists. So here's Mr. Dan Sultan and myself, who needs a haircut at that point in my life. And we are talking about the science of guitars and why it's important. This is some of the experiments, the Redfern Jerome School. This is Robinson River School, and we're doing the old color experiment. This was the strawberry DNA experiment. So you can actually extract with fetal alcohol some strawberry DNA in the classroom. And this is a regularly available experiment. You can get off the internet. It's really deadly. And, it's really, really important that kids know that they can be scientists. And kids are the best scientists because they always ask why. One of the things we do as well, we supply clean, sustainable drink bottles to mob in community as well. We haven't done this for a while because we've been sort of short on donations and we've been putting our resources elsewhere. But I want to get back into this and provide these kids with their own drink bottle. having your own clean, sustainable drink bottle with water is so important, and it's a basic human right. So Deadly Science is doing a lot of stuff on the ground. My brainchild that came out of my head. But we've also been giving a newfound community, and this is something that I'm going to tell you about. This up here is the Billaraboo Rangers, and they're up in the Western Australia, in the top of Western Australia, and they're doing some bilby work. So they're tracking down some bilbies, which is the Ninu in that community. And we've got a number of communities part of this program, and what they're doing, which is really cool. I'll just skip through this one. So what they're doing with the bilbies and the great desert skink, the Jillibar, is we've got the kids actually collecting data and sending that to researchers in the University of Sydney and across Australia. So we've got kids actually helping save the great desert skink or the bilby by collecting their DNA and providing that to the Australian Genomics Lab. So this is providing opportunities for our young kids to be part of real practical research. So to use these tools actually in action. So we've been supporting our junior ranger programs, and this is one of my favorite things. We've also been sending greenhouse kits to community, and that's to help reduce the cost of food in community. A single piece of lettuce can cost up to $28. Well, what's next? That I hear you ask when this drum roll that is coming. Well, we're actually starting to translate STEM resources via primary connections into languages. So first languages, so reviving first languages, actually creating some new words to help provide physics lessons, for example, in language. So we can continue to teach our kids in first language and grow first languages. So they're not going to become extinct. They're actually going to be used. So this is something we're doing. We're doing videos, we're doing lesson plans, and we're printing these books, which are going to be in language, and they're going to explain ecology, biology, physics, you name it, in language, which is really exciting. How you can get involved? All these things. But first, share us, like us, share our journey. And it's just really important that you can't be what you can't see. So let's all work together to make kids everywhere in Australia and New Zealand see that they can be scientists. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Corey. You're amazing. We love hearing your story, and I know that we've talked before, and I love hearing your journey. I think there's lots of stories, some backstories from when you're growing up that you skipped over this time. I know we talked about it on the podcast. The role of your pop, as well as of the book that he shared with you, and all of those wonderful things that really helped you to follow this journey into STEM. There is some great questions that are coming through, and we might save some of them for later, but one of them I think would be really great to just touch on now. Timothy's asked if there's ways as non-Indigenous teachers, such as myself and some of the people who are listening, as teachers, how can we engage First Nations students that we have in our classrooms to engage and to encourage them to follow STEM paths? I mean, you shared that story of the careers advisor who kind of didn't give you great advice, and we don't want to be those teachers. We want to be the teachers who are encouraging our Indigenous students into STEM and following their passions. What can we do as non-Indigenous teachers in that way, do you think?
So the whole notion you can't be what you can't see makes a lot of sense, right? So if you've got images of Albert Einstein, Thomas Edison, primarily one demographic of people, then your First Nations kids in your class aren't going to connect with that because they don't see themselves in that. I think it's really important that, this is why I wrote First Scientists, so kids could see themselves in the book. It is so important that being visual is everything. But also, if you're in Australia, the chances are in your lifetime that your local police force once upon a time hired Aboriginal trackers to find people missing in the bush. Now, a little idea that I have for teachers to try and emulate that kind of stuff is if you've got a sand pit, what you do is you get one of your students to walk across the sand, and then you get another to get a gum leaf or a branch and just dust over the footprints, and then get the other students to guess where the person's walked. Mix it up a bit.
Yeah, love that. And they would love that. I can see I've got a year one class, and I can just imagine them absolutely loving that. And that's just a great practical way that you can get them thinking about those things. Because I remember when we had a chat, you said, you know, the Blue Mountains and, you know, those places where First Nations people lived thousands and thousands of years ago, and they're really harsh environments. And for them to be able to live in those environments, they are really sophisticated people. And we just really need to unpack that for our students and make that just common everyday experiences.
Well, in Australia as well, I mean, you know, Indigenous science is all around us. It's actually ingrained in our culture. If you've ever had ants in your house and you've heard that that causes rain, that comes from blackfellas. If you've ever had damper, that comes from blackfellas. If you've ever had black cockatoos fly over your house and you've heard that that causes rain, that's from Aboriginal people. So wherever you are in Australia, there is still evidence of the first scientists still around today.
Yeah, and I think resources such as this First Scientist book that we want to get out there, I think this is a great resource that you could have in your classroom that brings that knowledge to our students and makes it every day so that they can just be used to that.
It also comes with teacher's notes. So you can Google First Scientist teacher's notes and download a free PDF, and it will, and also there's another one as well, which is Victor Stepson's Fire Country. Now that's really interesting as an educator, because, you know, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and Maori people as well used fire to protect the land and keep the land young. So this is a really good idea to channel into some of these resources and share them with your young ones. Get them excited about science again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, thank you so much, Corey and Fee. And we are going to bring you back towards the end of this workshop, Corey, to answer some more questions. But it was really such a wonderful opportunity that we just couldn't miss to get you in here and to learn a little bit more about Indigenous knowledge, but through the Deadly Science program, and also obviously the book as well. And really excited to give away 10 copies of the book.
Get in fast because I've got relatives that need them, and I'm going to enter myself.
I'm not sure if I'm not sure. We might take your name out, but we'll see. We'll see. All right, Corey. We'll see you back in a little while. So thank you so much for sharing with us. All right, Fee. We're gonna start moving forward, and we are going to. I was working with. Absolutely. I was working with a wonderful Indigenous woman, Hayley McQuire. Some of you might know her work. She does wonderful things in youth leadership. And she always says, you can't go forward without looking back at where you came from. And I totally love that that concept. And that is my little segue into us having a quick look back at the process that we've been learning about during this time.
Yes, and I think it's really important that we look at it as a whole before we break it up, because really it is a process that we want our students to work through from the start. And we know that a lot of their learning and the things that they will take out of it are through the process, but it's really important that we can see it as a whole picture. So in the first session, which was a month ago, can you believe it was a month ago? I can't believe it was 4 weeks ago. We started looking at this process and talking about a socially important challenge. And so how can we engage our students in socially important challenges? Where can we find them? So we looked at the SDGs, we looked at some picture book stimulus. We started thinking about how can our students find these socially important challenges to engage with. And then once we found this, we kind of moved to STEMpathy, which is empathy with the STEM. And I really think that you should trademark that, Chris, because I think you're onto something there. Mm-hmm. When we talk about empathy, we know that it's all about putting ourselves in somebody's shoes, thinking about things through somebody else's perspective. But with STEMpathy, we're wanting to do that through a science, technology, engineering, mathematics kind of lens. And I remember the thing that I remember most from that session was Chris's simulation activities that he had with the students, where they were trying to, I think, they had the Jenga tower and they had some gloves on. So what is it like to do Jenga when you've got low mobility in your fingers? You can't quite get the bits and pieces out. So really, again, you're putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, but you're kind of taking it from a different angle with that STEM approach. And then in the last session, we started looking at the state of the problem. So identifying what is it that we're trying to solve or help our target audience with after we've kind of developed that sympathy, and getting into that idea generation, helping build up all of those ideas that students can then turn into a prototype. So that's kind of where we went last session. So this session, we're really wrapping up the process by looking at how can our students share what they've learned, and also how can they provide critique and feedback to each other about their prototypes and their learning through this process. So to show one way that you can get students to share their ideas, I'm going to quickly do a walkthrough with Google Sites. I'm going to quickly just build one up on my screen, and then that way you can see how easy Google Sites are. I absolutely love them. I haven't used them with my year 1 students yet in terms of them building it, but they're able to easily navigate it and use things like that. So I'm just going to share my screen so that
awesome.
I can...
While you're doing that, Fee, I'm going to jump off and leave you in the very capable hands of Jim, who's going to add in some of those examples and things as you are going through and sharing your screen. So I'm going to bring your screen up into the stream now, Fee, and then I'll see you back shortly.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. So Google Sites is a great tool for lots of reasons. We were using it during remote learning as like our learning hub for our students, but it's also a really great tool as a blog or as a portfolio where you can have students show their learning. So they could create a prototype following the design thinking process, and you could put it up on a Google site as a celebration of their work. You could have it as each student or each group of students making their own Google site, or you might be able to do it where the students, you put in your whole class of students and you put up all of the prototypes and share it with an external audience, such as, you know, your community or a global community, depending on the purpose of the project. So if you go to sites.google.com, or if you go to your waffle bar up the top, you can find Google Sites, and it will look like this page. At the top, it gives you the option to start a new site, and if you're wanting something super simple and you're not wanting to think too much about what the site looks like, there are templates that you can use. And if you click on this bar that says Template Gallery, it will open up a variety of different templates for you, and it will even give you some categories of templates. So there's personal, work, a small business, and there's education. So you could have a class template down here. And what the template has is it just has places that you can put images. It has places where you can put text. It makes the layout all ready for you. But what I often find...
You know what I like about that, if I can interrupt you for a second, Fee, is that on the Google for Education accounts, there is an opportunity for schools to create templates of their own. So that way you can have a standardized template for particular projects or something, maybe teacher portfolios or something like that. So that these templates are great.
Really, and it's great to, again, like if you're doing a design thinking process project across multiple classes, as you said, Jim, you'd be able to create the template and then share it so everyone in all of those classes have it. I like that. That's fantastic. I think I did see that pop up the other day and I was like, what's this? So now I know. That's awesome. So if you click on the blank, I find it easier to just create a blank site because then I have control over what I put into it and the different ways that I can do that. So when it pops up, it'll pop up at the top with kind of like your header image. You can see there it says page title. You can enter a site name in this top left corner. And the bottom white is kind of like where you're going to fill your page in. And then on the right here, you can see it's got a very simple menu. And I love it because it's just so easy to follow. It's so easy to understand the different things that you can put into your website. So the first thing I might say is design project, and my shift button's not working, so we're just going to skim over that a little bit. And I might give it another title, design project for school. You would obviously call it something much more fancy than that. And then you've got the options of obviously jazzing up the header. By click, you can change the image. You can upload something from your computer if you had an image you wanted to use, maybe some student work. You've also got the option in here to select some images that are preset in Google Sites. And you can actually upload those in a variety of spots on the page, and it helps break up the page really nicely, which I'll show you how to do in just a minute. So you can see there's gallery options, URL options. You can do the Google image search like we discussed previous session, just an overall search in your albums and your Google Drive. So as always, Google Tools have all of those nice integrations across the Google Tools. So this has a very seamless integration with Google Drive, as well as if we scroll down here, you can embed Google Forms, Google Sheets, all of those different bits and pieces. So once you've kind of done your top header and you're actually wanting to populate the site, if you go over to the right-hand side here, it has insert, and you can put in lots of different options. You can put in a text box and say, this is our design project for the term. Students can put in some information. They might write about what their project is about. They might give some of that sympathy background in that. They might even do it as a video and embed the video in the website as well. So the great thing about the website is there is lots of different options for embedding into the site, and it's all in one place. So if your students have made a video for their prototype, they've designed a prototype and they've got images, if they've used Google Slides, if they've collected data with Google Sheets like we looked at the other week, they can upload it all into this one spot. So as a teacher or as somebody in the community who is looking at the project, it's literally all in the one page, which is fantastic. There's options to embed YouTube videos or other types of URLs, embed code. So I've used, if you use Screencastify or Loom or one of those kinds of tools, and you got the code, you can put it into there and it embeds it straight into the website. You can upload an image from your computer, so similar to how I did it just before. If you've got another picture from your project that you're wanting to upload, you can put it inside there. And then there's the Drive options as well. If you don't like it being so free range in how you put things on the Google site, there are layouts that you can choose from. So if you're wanting to have some images next to each other, there's the options here where you can choose different layouts that, as you can see here, they've put text underneath it, prototype 1, prototype 2, and you can just put those layouts in there for you. And as you could see before, it's very easy to drag and drop different elements from the across the website. So I'm just clicking and dragging and dropping. So I'm changing where I want that layout to go. It's a really nice way of setting up a website. You don't need HTML code. You don't need to know JavaScript, none of those things. It's literally just drag and drop and put in the elements that you want. So after you look at the layout,
the nice stuff, I think the nice stuff about that is that there's still opportunities for student expression. So we have this set design with expectation of what we want from them, but there's also this, like you're showing, I can move things around, I can add images, different color combinations to reflect myself as opposed to in that space, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives them that ownership over it as well. This is my project. I'm really proud of my project. I'm wanting to show it off, and it helps give them that pride in their work as well. Another part to that, Jim, is on the side, on the left-hand side here, it gives you the options of duplicating if you want the same layout maybe twice, and you just touch up the images and things like that. So you can duplicate a section. You can obviously, you just saw me delete a section there. If you're like, oh, I don't want that, I'll start that again, delete it. There's also this section colors. So if you're wanting to jazz it up a little bit, I'm all about the rainbow and the jazzing and all of that. Although in year one, we have to say information before decoration, because otherwise they spend their whole time putting rainbows on everything. So you can put images behind as well. And then you've got this gallery option, which is the kind of pre-standard Google site option. So you can see there that that's another option that students can have for that self-expression and making it their own kind of project. So they can just literally keep populating down as they go. They can insert more text as they go down the page, and the page will just kind of keep expanding as they add things to it. There's also, obviously, as I mentioned before, there's lots of different options down here. You can add a table of contents, and these are hyperlinks. So if you clicked on prototype 1, it would come down to the prototype 1 down here. So they will automatically help people to navigate the site. So if you wanted to have, oh, this is my data, this is my sympathy, and you had them as titles up the top, the student, when you are looking at the website and you click on that link, it'll scroll down to the page to where you want it to go. You can put buttons in there. I don't have a link on me to put there, but you can see that you can put buttons in there if you want them to link to other external things. You can put a placeholder there if you're like, okay, I've got an image, I need to come back to that. You can put calendar in. Obviously, you can just see all of the different options there. And there's the slides, Word doc, Google Doc, if the students are working in a Google Doc and maybe they've put together some information that they want to include, their sheets, their forms, their charts. The last thing I'll mention, because I know we need to move on to some other cool tools, here is pages. So if you want to have more than one page, if your students might have their sympathy page, where they might put all of their sympathy learning, you can see that as I created that, two things happened. First, the page was created on the right-hand side here under pages. And also you can see that up the top right-hand corner here on the page layout, sympathy turned up the top here. So now if I click between home, my home page will come up that I was playing with before, and then the sympathy page came up. And the students, again, they could populate this sympathy page with their research, with some of the activities that they underwent. If they're keeping a journal, that journal that we looked at, I think in week 1, that Chris shared with us, they might have their journal on that sympathy page. You've also got the opportunities to link it underneath. So you can see I just dragged and dropped that on home, and that little arrow popped up. So now home has a little drop-down menu. So there's lots of different options for having multiple pages. So if your students are wanting to structure their learning from the design project and they want to have multiple pages to show their work, there is that option as well. So that's just a brief overview of Google Sites. Always happy to chat more about it, but I think that for now, that kind of shows some of the basics for that.
Oh, I love Google Sites.
Isn't it the best? I could use it all day.
I really do. Like, it's so good. I think one of the really awesome pieces is all of that interoperability, which I know you mentioned, Fee. But yeah. I couldn't remember which course we mentioned this in, and it might not have been this course. So let me just double check in my brain. But you can even insert a chart which has some data. So for example, in Stempathy, maybe the students have done a survey, they've collected some data, and you can insert really easily a chart. You know what, Jim, rather than talking it through, why don't I just do it? Why don't I just, I'm excited now by sites, right? So I was just saying, let me just put my Chromebook in. I tell you
why you're looking for that, Chris. I think it's important to note with Google Sites that there's no warning that a document that you've embedded into a page that you can't. There's no warning that it's not shared correctly. So you always want to remember when you're putting a document from Google Drive into Sites that you have the sharing turned on, either to share internally with that specific group of people, or anyone with the link can view.
Yeah.
Brilliant. The wonderful Janine.
Yeah, she mentioned the living charts. I was going to say, I remember that.
Because I'll stop sharing then. No, so I was just excited, Janine. No, I was excited because the same thing happens in charts. So if the kids have done their STEMpathy work, in sites, if the kids have done their STEMpathy work and they just click on charts and they can insert a chart from, let's just look at this one for now. Insert that. They can choose the chart. Let's do that one. So the different states, add that in here. And again, I think it's just a beautiful way to represent that data, and that will update. So if the data changes, if they add in new data, then it will update in the site as well, which is awesome, super cool. So we've looked very briefly at how we might, I'll just leave that up there for now because I may as well use that as an example, how we might create a presentation, how we might share our learning through Google Sites. But what we're going to do now, he says, just skipping tabs all over the place, is I'm going to give you a really simple technique, which I love, and I always used to do it on Post-it notes and paper, but now I tend to do it digitally because it can be really useful. Here's a Jamboard, and I think we're going to stick the link into the chat if anybody wants to jump on this Jamboard. And if anyone has used, I'm sure you have heard of Edward de Bono's thinking hats. So where the different hats represent different colors. Where the different colored hats represent different ways of thinking. I'm doing a really good job, Fee, at this explanation today.
It's been a long day.
It has been a long day at the end of a long month. Is it the end? It's only the start of the month.
The start of November.
Anyway, so the idea with the thinking hats is I adapted them by saying, okay, when we give critique, and most importantly, when we help students to give each other critique, we need to give them structure. Because otherwise it just becomes like, oh, I love the color you've used here, which is good, that's nice, but not really super helpful. Or it's like, I hate the font you've used here. And it becomes opinion rather than actual structured critique. So what we do with the critique hats here, and please, I'm pretty sure I set it to make it editable. We'll give you a copy of this. Yeah, I did. We'll give you a copy of this in the in Classroom, so you don't have to worry about messing up this copy. The idea would be Fee is going to present her website. So she presents the Google site she's created, which is showing her STEMpathy, shows her ideas, shows her solution that she's designed for this challenge. And while she's presenting, and this can be any kind of presentation, we are live and able to add in sticky notes. And what I did is just organize them so that you know how to add a sticky note in Jamboard. Just click on the sticky note icon. I love the clarity of your site. Easy to navigate. Now, I'm sure no teacher in this call has ever just written good work on their on some kids' work. I definitely have many times. Good work. But good work is a little bit meaningless, like it's not really super helpful. What the hats allows you to do is to have lots of different perspectives, like what do I really like about this? What are the potential weaknesses of this solution? How does it make you feel? Do you have all of the facts, some white hat thinking? Do you have any creative suggestions, some green hat thinking? And maybe what needs to happen next? What would you do if you were going to give advice to this person? What do you think they should do next to improve their solution? And so the lovely way that Jamboard works is that we actually keep a record of that. So as the user getting the feedback or the critique, I'm able to look at that and go, oh, that's what Fiona said. And I mean, what you can do again is even add in, oops, sorry, I was on the wrong screen. This one here. I'm trying to go on too many tabs. You might add in your name. Lots of love, Chris. Lots of love, Chris. Here we go. So then the person knows where that critique has come from and is in fact able to seek further critique or get some more feedback. So this is a lovely tool, really super simple. And what you might do is set it up so that you're using multiple canvases. So each of the students has their own canvas. So they might be, and you can just scroll through. You can add students' names. And just a really quick reminder is that to do that, you set the background. And it's already, let me just change the background. You go set the background and you add an image. So the way I got this image, just to show you really quickly, I think we might have already, we've definitely already shared this resource, Thinking Canvas, is to, here we go, just loading that up. Come on. Even my computer is now thinking I've had enough, too slow.
It's had a big day too.
It's had a big day. It really has, actually. I've been working with school, just FYI, I've been working with the school all day online, looking at knowledge set, mindset, skill set, tool set planning. That was exciting. Yeah. So in the Thinking Canvas, we've got that background. All I'm going to do is go File, just to remind you how to do this. I'm going to download as a JPEG. And you can use this with any of the Thinking Canvases or any of your own canvases. That's going to save the file as an image. So I'll just call it Debono. I met Debono, by the way, when I was in Auckland.
That's exciting. Wow.
It was nice, don't get me wrong. But then I'm going to go into the set background. I'm going to choose an image. And then I can either go into like my Google Images or my Drive or on my Chromebook. I might just browse, click on Debono JPEG. And that is going to then upload that into the background and creates it as a lovely kind of wallpaper that is now unmovable. Alrighty.
I was going to say, Chris, something. I just want to say what I really like about that is it's so great across all the ages. So I can see me easily being able to do that with year one, like a bit more scaffolding perhaps, but they can easily answer those questions, based off somebody else's presentation or project, as well as up to year 12. So I think that's really helpful.
Absolutely. And again, it's very human to give opinion. And sometimes we need just to structure it a little bit. As Tim says here, to keep the feedback positive and within useful boundaries. That's a really lovely way of putting it, Tim. And I think the other thing which I always talk about when I'm working with kids on prototypes and getting feedback to solutions is tell people how much feedback you want.
Yeah.
So don't just go in there and go, here's my idea, or here's my prototype, or here's my solution, and give me some critique. Say, it's 99% finished. I just want feedback on the look and feel, whether I've crossed the T's and dotted the I's, or I'm really, really open to loads of feedback on this, go crazy.
Yeah.
And by giving that permission is also a really useful thing, because I used to always help people through kind of professional learning on how to give good critique. And then I realized I actually need to spend some time on how to take good critique, because it's as important, right? It's as important.
That's a skill in itself.
100%. It's a hard skill, because I am very, very thin-skinned. I'm like, my idea is beautiful, and you just wrecked it. One of the terms that Jim and I use a lot is holding your ideas lightly. And I think I might have mentioned that at some point, but this idea of holding your idea lightly, don't be precious with it, share it, take feedback, and allow it to grow. I'm going to segue beautifully now, Fee. Watch how good this segue is.
Nice.
I'm going to share this Jamboard, which I think we're going to drop. Oops, on the wrong frame. We're going to drop into the chat in just a second. Do you want to explain what we're going to do with this Jamboard for the next few minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. So because this is the last session and we have looked through the process of design thinking, and we've gotten all of these fantastic ideas from everybody who's watching, and the comments is just fantastic with all of the input that you've put together. We wanted to be able to have a resource that you could take away with you that has just a whole bunch of ideas that you could turn into projects and other things like that in your classroom. So this Jamboard that we're going to share very shortly actually has a slide for each stage of the design thinking process. So you can see the one that's up at the moment is the socially important challenge. Then there's sympathy. Then there is the green light. Yep, green light assessment, state of the problem. Going on to the idea generation. Thank you. You're right on time. I love it. The next one is the prototype and critique. And then lastly, the sharing and enacting. And what we would love for you to be able to do is to jump onto the Jamboard, grab a sticky note, and add in some ideas that you might take away as a project for the classroom. So, for example, on the first page where it says a socially important challenge, what are some socially important challenges that you might use in the classroom? Grab a sticky note and put your idea on there so that we can share it together for everybody who's watching this. And so that when we're finished this session, not only are you going to have your amazing micro-credential and these beautiful videos to watch back on for years to come, but you'll also have this Jamboard with all of these ideas from colleagues across Australia, across New Zealand, across the world potentially, of some challenges and some ways that you can do the design thinking process in your classroom. So if you want to jump on, the Jamboard link is in the comments. Grab a sticky note and start adding some ideas of some socially important challenges, some sympathy ideas that we can actually start doing in the classroom.
Absolutely. And while hopefully you're going to jump in and add in some ideas, we're going to spend maybe 4 or 5 minutes on this. Please feel if there are any challenges. I think everyone, people are jumping on the board, which is awesome. Here we go. Yes.
I love it.
Our first idea: how to harvest rainwater for the school garden. Oh,
great idea.
Love it. And I'm just thinking, and this is what I love about doing this work, is I'm already thinking, oh, I need to talk to Corey about how we can connect with that, because I'm suddenly thinking like deep Indigenous knowledge about harvesting water for the garden. Hey, I don't know whether Corey is feeling up for it, whether he wants to jump back in.
Hint.
Yes,
Oh, there he is.
I'm back. I've been watching. I've been amazed. How has this happened before my very eyes?
So, Corey, in terms of your experience, so we're just letting people add their own ideas, and while they're doing that, we might just chat a little bit. What kind of really wonderful projects and challenges with a STEM focus, especially around things like social innovation, like conservation, sustainable development, all that kind of stuff. What have you seen? What kind of ideas have you got that you might be able to share with us? I might put them on the Jamboard.
I had one idea which was really unique, because my fiance is a geneticist that works with bilbies, and she kept saying, "Oh my God, I can't get any bilby samples anywhere," and I was like, "Well, who do I know that has plenty of bilbies?" And I often get photos of them sent to me. Actually, the Kurikara kids up on the border of Western Australia and the NT, Northern Territory. So I was like, how good would it be if they could get some DNA all the way to Sydney, and then that can be coded by the researchers and sent back to the deadly scientists so they can do a project on it. So I think that connecting bilbies, connecting data, would be a really, really cool a really cool project for kids, but also for kids at home. Now, there's a really, really cool sort of bit of science that you can do at home, is that eventually what will happen is that regularly available will be eDNA kits. And eDNA kits is where you can collect samples of soil, bits of water, and you can test what animals and what plants have been there before.
So is that eDNA is in like electronic?
No, it's in microDNA, so it's not a full DNA sample.
Ah.
That will be something that kids will be able to do soon. But I think that for those at home that potentially want to do a really cool science experiment, and coding a science experiment would be to set up a camera and count how many birds fly in your backyard and what species, and then maybe set up a little website to show how many birds live in your area.
You might like this one, Corey, because it involves animals. I was lucky enough to work with Melbourne Zoo and some students from Australian and Papua New Guinean schools, and we looked at the project that they've done with the pygmy mountain possum. Is that the right term? Mountain pygmy possum. Very small possum. And they've been researching why those numbers have been dropping. And they found out that using citizen science, so using people to say, have you seen, and it was actually not even counting the possums, it was counting the boggon moths. And what they discovered is that which the possums eat in the millions when the moths arrive in Victoria. And the moths actually migrate south. And as they come south, suddenly they were arriving, not suddenly, but over a number of years, arriving later and later. And what they found, it was actually the light pollution from Sydney and the ACT was knocking the kind of navigational path of the boggon moth out, which was then impacting on the diet of the pygmy possum. So that whole piece around citizen science, and they only found that out because people were going out and collecting that data on boggon moths. So I love that idea of citizen science.
There's something really interesting that's happening at the moment in Australia, and something that I'm particularly involved in. And it's a type of fungus called a citrus fungus. So it's affecting all our frogs on the east coast of Australia, and it's actually wiping out our green tree frogs. So if there's anyone in Queensland or New South Wales, there is an app you can download, and even if you're not in those jurisdictions, you can still download this app. It's pretty deadly, and it's called Frog ID. Now, the Frog ID app is really, really interesting because you can take a recording of a frog and you can identify the frog by its croak, but also you can send in photos of frogs that you find, and that will help researchers help track the fungus and also keep track of the numbers of frogs, because frogs are having a hard time. We've had bushfires, we've had floods, we've had cane toads, which have moved across all of northern Australia and wiped out a lot of the frogs' food sources. So we're being a bit rough on frogs. So download the app and get involved in the Frog ID app.
I dropped a link in the chat, and as I grabbed the link, I did notice that it indeed is Frog ID Week, starting on the 12th of November. So in 2 days' time, it's Frog ID Week. So what a great, if you haven't planned your lessons for next week. Yeah. But if you haven't planned your lessons for next week, you suddenly have a really great STEM-focused lesson there, and then designing solutions to these challenges. Absolutely.
There's also another frog experiment / engineering feat for the students at home, and that is a frog hotel. What is a frog hotel, you ask, as I hear you say to your computer and yell out, I must know. If you Google frog hotels are a bit of PCB pipe in the ground. And you sort of drench them with a hose, but the frogs live inside the PVC pipe, and it stops them from getting into your drains and annoying you and annoying your mum and dad. But they're really, really deadly because they keep the frogs safe, and the frogs love them.
Awesome. So I'm just going to scroll through because we've got some brilliant ideas here. We've got possum problems. We've got water challenges. We've got how to manage the waste of disposable masks. I was talking to my wife about this the other day. Like, where are those disposable masks going? Into landfill, into the sea? So some really.
And did you know? Because I didn't know this. Did you know you're supposed to snip off the elastic around the ears because wildlife are getting caught up in the elastic around, which is really, it's sad. Yeah.
So we create our own problems as well, right?
I saw an interesting innovation once. So do you guys remember on the cans of soft drink, you have those, if you have a 6-pack, you have those sort of plastic things that, So someone in America was making those out of fish food. So making those into fish food. So when they did get into the ocean, they degraded and fish were able to eat them. So I think it was like a kelp-based product. But these are things that kids can come up with.
Exactly what I was just going to say, Corey. You took the words out of my mouth. That whole, when we give young people the opportunity, the challenges, and the skills and tools and resources to tackle these problems, they are amazing, and they can come up with amazing solutions. Feel free to stay for a few minutes. We're going to do the Q&A with Corey shortly. So anyone who has questions, and please get those ready. And please feel free. What we might do is give you a 5-minute rest, Corey, and put you back in the green room with a cup of tea.
Thank you. It's great
And
here. There's free food. There's air conditioning. Wait, it's my own house.
It's your
That's
house,
right.
yeah. Right, cheers. We'll see you soon, Corey. So what we're going to do now is just have a look at some other planning tools, and I will go through this really quickly, the Jamboard, but I really recommend that you come back to this and have a look and share, because we've got a bunch of great ideas, but we've also got some thoughts on STEMpathy. We've also got some thoughts on actually getting kids to do those green light assessments, video and news reports, using the data, learning journals.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thoughts are on idea generation, crazy eights, random conversations. We've got some thoughts on prototyping and critiquing, which I love, and also some thoughts on how might you share and enact some of this. So please continue to share. We're going to share this into the classroom so that you can continue to use this, add to it, and hopefully learn from it. What we're going to do now is give you, I'm skipping tabs all over the place today, is we're going to just have a quick look at some planning. And we're going to give you 2 tools. Now, the first tool is challenging because, as you know, there is a curriculum review happening as we speak. And let's not talk about the history curriculum. Never mind that we haven't started on the STEM curriculum, but there are some real challenges happening. And so with the curriculum, so I'm giving that as a preface to what I'm going to say next. I spent a reasonable amount of time copying and pasting the curriculum descriptors and outcomes for the Australian curriculum, the Victorian curriculum, and a wonderful friend of mine, Chris Hopkins. If any of you know Chris, he's at Scarborough near Wollongong. And Chris actually did these ones, the New South Wales ones. So he created the New South Wales. And what I want to do is give you this as a tool, because hexagonal planning for me is it's creative and exciting. It makes you look at your curriculum in a different way, and it also genuinely allows you to be transdisciplinary. So what I mean by transdisciplinary is that when you look at these hexagons, and I'll show you them in more detail in a second, when you look at these hexagons and you see the different colors, they are different domains. So I can't actually, New South Wales, I never remember which way around those colors go, but there's English, there's maths, there's science in there, there's arts in there. There are also capabilities in there like literacy and ICT. And what you can see is, especially on this middle one, I think it's super clear, is that the planning teams I was working with up in Stanwell Tops, I think that's near Wollongong. Yeah, I think that's where it was. And thank you. And what you'll see is we worked with 80 odd teachers, primary school teachers mainly for this one. And we use the STEM and social innovation process. So you can see down the side here, you've got STEMpathy and state of the problem and idea generation and prototyping. This team hasn't quite finished yet. But what they did is we've got things like, how can we reduce our waste footprint? Is plastic fantastic? And this last one on the right-hand side was, I don't think you can read it. You might be able to see the word joy up here circled. This one was, how might we design a moment of joy for every person who comes into our school every day? So whilst you might think, well, how is that a STEM project? Actually, the designs that people came up with, so much engineering in there, but also, and even looking at how they wanted to rebuild, I think they may well have gone on to do this, to rebuild the seating outside to make it joyous, but also doing things like doing surveys, using spreadsheet data in STEMpathy to understand what made people happy. And what you can see on the board is that the more colors there are, the more transdisciplinary those projects are, because they're starting to meet those outcomes. So the hexagonal, so this is where my caveat comes in. What I'm going to do, and I think we're going to share this into the sorry, thank you. We're going to share it in the classroom, and we might even stick it in the chat. Sorry, just like I've got a frog in my throat, ironically. What we're going to do is share these folders. So my caveat is this could well change within a few months. So anyway, I will redo them when we get some new curriculum. That's my promise to you. But if we look at the Victorian is the one I'm most across. This is the one I use most, living in Victoria. Let me show you, for example, the year 6 one. It's probably a good one to have a look at. What we've got is all of the outcomes for the curriculum by domain. So civics and citizenship. So you might look at things like citizenship, diversity, and identity. That might come into your project. You might look at critical and creative thinking. Like if you're not using critical and creative thinking in STEM, then that's a really, I would argue that you're not doing STEM. But there are things like metacognition, coming up with possibilities, reasoning. You've then got dance. Like, why not? Why not bring dance into what you're doing? Or design and technologies. Obviously, that fits beautifully. Digital technologies, economics and business, English reading and viewing and writing, English writing. So there's a lot of English, speaking and listening. And then ethical capabilities. Like this one for me is actually a really interesting one, why we should absolutely be tackling that within STEM. And then geography, intercultural capability, health and PE, history, maths. Now, as you start to scroll through 1, 2, 3, maths pages and media arts, etc., etc. So they keep going. Personal, social, science, and that's it, I think, for level 6. Now, what I'm going to do is make you dizzy, is just like flick through that really fast. And you look at that curriculum and you wonder, why is it hard for us to deliver the full curriculum? There's so much in it. So when we're being smart with our transdisciplinary planning, so our STEM planning, for example, as an example of transdisciplinary learning, we can actually touch so many areas of the curriculum and connect them in meaningful ways. So the idea, and I've actually done this, I think Louise Johnson's in the call, and I've done this with a group of teachers with her, and that ability to sit down with your team, look at the curriculum and go, okay, this is huge, but let's look at what we can connect together meaningfully. So as a resource that's there for you, we've got the Australian, it's currently up to grade 6, and we've got the New South Wales in there as well. In that folder. So please feel free to have a look and have a go at these. I won't explain it, but it is a really creative process and a really enlightening process just to sit down with these and start cutting out. I do it on paper, which is maybe we should do it more digitally, but the ability to create your kind of first level of planning, your big picture planning, using the structure of the STEM and social innovation process, and then bringing your curriculum to it. All right, I'm just looking at the time. Very quickly then, I'm going to show you one more thing. And we're going to pop this into Classroom, and we're going to pop it into the chat as well. This will force a copy. So this will do a forced copy. It'll make a copy for you. And what this is the Social Innovation Design Guide. And basically what it does, and I won't go through the whole thing, it's probably 6 pages maybe. This is the super detailed planning. And so what we do is we start off and say, okay, what's the innovation or idea? And you might decide that there is a challenge that you're all going to tackle. Or you might decide that each child can choose their own challenge. And that all of that's very valid. But the questions that we need to answer is, well, what's the socially important problem we're trying to solve? Who will benefit? Why does this challenge matter? Why will students care? And what I've done is for each of these sections is just ask some reflective questions, like what curriculum content will the students investigate? What do you want the students to write, create, perform, or build? List of the likely final products. I say likely because you might not know. This is a design process, so things might change. And then how are you going to get kids to share and enact? What's your success criteria? What learning goals might you be putting in there in terms of academic content? What are the mindset, skill set, and tool set that you want kids to develop while they're working towards a solution? How will this project promote literacy and numeracy? What will students write? How will you scaffold this to support all writers? And then each section by section, the process. So what is the challenge? What are the activities you could do for STEMpathy? How are you going to get kids to state the problem? How are you going to help kids to stimulate idea generation? How are you going to, and you talked beautifully about this last week, Fee, how are you going to build prototypes? How are you going to share and enact? How are you going to reflect and assess? What resources do you need? So it's just a kind of a detailed planning doc. I'm not going to come and check your planning, anyone, by the way. It's not like it's not one of those where it's like you must plan your thing and I'm going to come and check it. But I hope it gives you
at the end.
I hope it gives you the a sense of it's just like some guiding questions just to support you in thinking about what you might think about when you're starting to design a more detailed version of this. So in terms of planning tools, we've got the detail planner, we've got the hexagons, which are there and available for you. You've got all of your brilliant ideas, which are on the Jamboard. It's totally amazing. So what we're going to do now, I think, is we're going to start to wrap up. Yeah, we're going to start to. Oh yes. Oh, actually, this is where we have a planning meeting in the middle of the webinar. I think we're going to do. I think we're going to do the Q&A first, and then we're going to do the drum roll prize giving.
I was just getting really excited. Sorry, I was preempting too early.
I too am excited. So what I might do is, Jim, when you're ready, what we might do is get you back in and get Corey back in.
Corey.
And I might just take the Chromebook out. And I think we're going to start off with any questions and answers for Corey that we didn't get to early on. So please feel free to pop them into the comments if you have them. Let me just find them here.
And just so you know, I've entered 10 applications to potentially win a copy of Earth Scientist. So
did you put all as Corey's Cup, or did you put different names?
No, different alter egos.
So we won't know. We can't pull them out.
You may find one for Max Power in there, but it's okay.
All right, so I do have a question, and this is quite a challenging one. Belinda might want to even pop in some more detail into the chat. We're just going to disappear for a second up here. But Belinda was really interested in having some ideas about improving inclusivity when some of those current school policies are a barrier. So, Corey, I don't know if you do have anything around how you work and to improve inclusivity, but we can certainly jump in on that as well.
Most certainly. And again, it's about increasing visibility. Make sure that the resources you're using as an educator aren't showing just one demographic of people, for starters. Also, there's quite a few, I guess the language we use around how we explain STEM and teach STEM has probably been a bit incorrect in Australia. And one of the reasons is that when we talk about Aboriginal culture, we talk about it's their culture, it's not ours, but it's actually part of your history too. So if you were born and you reside in Australia, you come from the first country whose first people invented bread. Own it. It's a really deadly thing to own. But once when we acknowledge, sometimes the real change happens with words we don't want to hear. But when we acknowledge the bad things that have happened to our people and we start celebrating the really good things that our people bring, those languages that have been popping up in the comments, or the fact that we had the world's first bread, these are the things we should celebrate.
Absolutely. And I'm really scared to say this because I'll mangle it, but I know that Jim and I and some colleagues, a wonderful educator in the States called Ken Shelton, talk a lot about this idea of mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. So the idea of and it was in particular reference to the kind of literature and text that we give kids, is do they see themselves in those texts? Or in fact, are we being exclusive by using text which specifically exclude certain communities, and being really thoughtful about that idea, and the idea that the text we use should give us windows into difference, but they should also be able to see ourselves in there. And the idea of the sliding glass door about opening up the world to our kids by inviting them in rather than having them sitting from the outside looking in. So exactly what you're saying, Corey, that idea of if you're not representing your kids in the resources that you're using, then you are by kind of default, or they are feeling excluded. And it's a really powerful message. I do have another question from the wonderful Michelle. So I'm sure you can read that there, Corey. Any ideas about partnerships and sister school programs?
Yeah.
Just to jump on that, and I'm not sure if Michelle means it, but when you mention like the pen pals and things like that, I'm sure there'd be heaps of schools. Like I'm like, my year ones would love to jump on that. So I didn't mean to piggyback off Michelle's question, but maybe that's kind of, some of the things that she might be talking about.
Oh yeah, definitely. Send a message through to the website. The other thing, we often do partnerships like what the Deadly Sister was just saying there. Fee, we actually do so my sister's school, she's a Ballarang in the Illawarra, and she's just done a pen pal program where they've exchanged letters with Robinson River Remote Community School for a term. And we've done quite a few of these. I think we've done over 100 now. So get in touch and we'll put you in touch with another school, and potentially we can do a Zoom as well where kids can ask questions. But letters are really important. So if you're interested in being part of the pen pal program, then I think that's really great because the kids love it.
Me, I'm interested.
Sign up.
I'm jumping on.
Sign up.
But it's such a wonderful opportunity to connect kids. Then this work that we've been doing recently in Papua New Guinea, and I think I shared that in the first webinar about, we looked at WASH, so water, sanitation, health and well-being, WASH-W, and also climate crisis and climate resilience. And we had kids from PNG, and they were older. These kids were kind of your 10, 11, and 12. 10 and 11. Yeah, 10 and 11. They were in a Google Meet together. They're collaborating on Jamboards. They're writing and creating presentations using slides, because all of that collaborative, and I know I'm bringing it back to technology, but all of that collaborative technology where we have connectivity, and we worked really hard in PNG to help those communities and those schools get connectivity. I think I shared that story where we have one school in Gumini who drives up the mountain with the kids in the back of the ute, and it's the only place they can get reception on the cell phone that we've provided with the 20 gig of data. So everyone's sitting in the back of the ute doing this kind of brilliant STEM project. But I think that those connections are so important and so powerful, because if we can empower kids wherever they are, they all bring something wonderful to that conversation. I'm just like, sorry, Corey, go on.
Yeah, perspectives are important. For example, like we just did a new sort of partnership between an Illawarra school and Badu Island Remote Community School. And the kids from Badu Island are able to tell the kids down in the Illawarra region, down in Dharawal and Yuin country, that, they've got fishing nets washing up on their beaches. They've got rubbish washing up on their beaches. Boxes and boxes of stuff from cargo ships that are just rocking up. Actually, there was a new Ford Ranger that washed up on one of their beaches. So the impacts of climate change, the impacts on the environment. So these kids get a better perspective of, actually, if it's not quite affecting us here right now, it's actually affecting these kids in the Torres Strait. So we need to do our best here. So it helps them.
Amazing. Hey, Corey, we're running out of time. And we do have the extremely exciting book giveaway.
Can I drum roll yet? Can I do the drum roll yet?
You can definitely now drum roll. Definitely now drum roll.
Oh, the drum roll, it's here. It's here.
So I think Jim's going to come back on because he's going to run the magic. Very, very high tech, Corey. You're going to be extremely impressed about how high tech. And
do I need my gold jacket? Is this a Wheel of Fortune moment?
Did you not bring it?
Are we osmosising Wheel of Fortune? Are we bringing it back?
I wanted the old, bingo roller where you pull them out of the bingo roller. That would have been great.
No, we are going high tech.
I think I have it. Hold on. I think it's here. Well, we do have a sort of fancy way of doing this. I'm going to put everyone's name that entered the drawing up on the screen so that you really know the legitimacy of this. So there's no, oh my, there's no blaming.
That is
They're
about
actually really
2 kilos worth of books, and what Chris is doing now is the equivalent to 15 minutes in the gym. So please gain weight, and please gain the muscles, the summer bod with the First Scientist book.
That's only half of them as well. Okay, sorry, Jim. Let's go.
Yeah, no problem. Teresa, I'm going to make you a little bit small here, so hopefully that'll be all right. Yep, it looks like it's still okay, I hope. So we have...
this is terrible.
We have 10 books. There's only just a few people who are not going to get a book here, Chris. So I'm going to grab these names. Let's copy them, right? I'm going to go here. I'm going to paste these here into this box. Oh, no, I've done it wrong. The Wheel of Names is what this website is called. And hopefully, do I go here? There we go. I'm going to add names in here like this.
If you unclick advanced, Jim, see where you've got advanced clicked.
I feel like I practiced this. Let's do this.
Yeah. Just confirming my 20 entries have been excluded from this Wheel of Fortune.
I literally went through each one of them and removed them. So you can tell. I think this is it. I think we're ready to go.
Let's do it.
If you're ready, I'm ready. Is anybody last editions in here? Nope, everybody's in here. So here we go. Let's give it a spin.
Wheel of Deadly.
Ryan does not mean good luck. He's like, oh, Anna.
All right, Anna is here. She is in.
The first one is gone.
That's it. So Anna, you I think have been removed from here for not winning again. Here we go again.
Anna, if you want to ring your family and friends and tell them the great news, Tracy.
Chris, are you keeping track of who's winning?
I am.
I'm writing them down.
Okay, good. I was too. Here we go.
Right, let's do this next one, Jim.
I hope you were sitting down, Tracy, when you found out the news. Oh, damn it, man. He's won.
Hey, team, can we, right, everyone watching the webinar, just stop listening for a moment. Shall we just get some extra copies and send them out to everyone who entered?
Yeah.
Is that okay? We'll do that, Jim. Corey?
Yeah.
What about the fun of this?
Well, we can still do it.
Although I feel that champagne has been sprayed all over with these winners because this is the Wheel of Deadly.
It is a Wheel of Deadly. So what actually we will do is...
is that happening?
It's happening, yeah. What we'll do is we'll make sure we get some extra copies and we'll send a copy out to everyone who filled in the form. So thank you so much for that.
Congratulations, Deb.
Oh, can you keep going until Hanan wins?
Belinda Stone.
Just keep going, Jim. Keep going.
Well, that's a name. That's a name. You deserve to win just for your name alone.
Chris, you just continue to do you, and then I just want everybody to feel like they won.
I get it. So let's keep doing that.
Timothy Jones.
Right. It is now 5:29.
Country fella to you? Like, it sounds like he's from the country and younger. I love it.
All right. So what I'm going to do is just everyone don't look at what Jim is doing. And two things. We're going to send you all out a book, one of these amazing First Scientist books. We are also going to send you out a follow-up email with the resources. The resources will be in Google Classroom. And we are going to send you a Google form tonight, a little bit later on tonight. You will have 1 week to answer that form. And in that form, it's really straightforward. If you want to receive a micro credential, then you can fill in the form and you will get a credential which says you attended this course, you've used these resources, and that you are now an amazing STEM and social innovation designer. Can I just say, Jim, you need to keep going because, did Hanan win? Oh, good.
Yeah, she got it.
Hanan's children were watching.
Johnson, taking it home.
What happens at the end? What happens? Michelle's definitely going to win. I think there's a probability of 1 that she's going to win.
Congratulations, Michelle.
Congratulations.
Winner, chicken dinner.
Hey, we've hit 5:30. I know often our wonderful interpreters need to go and do other work. Thank you so much to Therese and to Nick for being our amazing interpreters throughout this webinar series. Thank you so much to Fee for being such a brilliant co-host. Fee, I'm going to come back to you in just 1 second after I thank Jim and Corey, because I want you to just talk a little bit about STEM Ed Magazine. To Jim for being just my best buddy on all these things. Always a pleasure to hang out with you and learn from you. And then Corey, you totally made this last webinar for us, mate. And so happy that we were able to get you, and you've been just amazing with your generosity and sharing your experiences and your ideas. And we will definitely continue to work with you and support you wherever we can moving forward. Fee, do you just want to wrap us up?
Yeah. So I just want to share this amazing resource that 2 of the 4 people on here have contributed to. I had the pleasure of interviewing Corey for issue 4 of the magazine. So if you want to hear more about his story and all of the awesome stuff that Deadly Science is doing, you can check that out. Issue 5, I literally got it in my hot little hands yesterday, so I'm super excited about it. And Chris contributed to that, which is amazing. So feel free to check out the magazine. It's online as well. There's a digital copy if you want to keep learning more about the design thinking process, all things STEM. There you go. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome.
So good.
So let's do our...
It's selling out, so get in fast. I have a
It's
copy.
a Christmas gift.
It's going to go on
gift.
eBay.
I'm making gift boxes. Don't joke about it. It's a thing.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time. The most important people are those who are in the room live. And then the second most important people are those who are watching the recording. Should have been here live. You could have had a copy of The First Scientist. Regrets. But thank you so much to you. And we will see you soon. Some of them we might see next week at the Hybrid Learning webinar. But otherwise, stay safe, enjoy your holidays, and we will definitely see you again in 2022. Awkward wave time, everyone.
Bye.